Russia's Doomsday Torpedo, the Poseidon Superweapon. The Doomsday Machine. For as long as nuclear weapons have existed, so too has the nightmare of the ultimate weapon. One so powerful it could wipe entire nations off the map in a single strike. During the Cold War, this nightmare was fueled by the arms race between Washington and Moscow, each side building bigger bombs, faster missiles, and deadlier submarines. But the dream, or perhaps the curse, of a true doomsday weapon never fully materialized. Until now. Enter the Poseidon, a weapon that seems torn straight from the pages of science fiction, but is chillingly real. Officially designated the Status 6 Oceanic Multi-Purpose System, Poseidon is no ordinary torpedo. It is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed underwater drone, a machine designed not for tactical advantage, but for apocalyptic destruction. With virtually unlimited range, Poseidon can glide silently beneath the ocean, evading detection for weeks or even months before surfacing near enemy coastlines with a payload capable of unleashing devastation on a scale never before seen. What makes Poseidon so terrifying is not just its raw destructive power, but its very concept. Traditional nuclear weapons, missiles, bombs, even submarine-launched warheads are meant to strike military targets, cities, or infrastructure. Poseidon is different. According to leaked Russian sources and Western intelligence estimates, its warhead could be as large as 100 megatons, dwarfing even the Tsar Bomba, the largest nuclear device ever tested. But the true horror lies in its intended effect: to generate a radioactive tsunami. Imagine a wall of water, hundreds of feet high, crashing into coastal cities like New York, Los Angeles, or London. Entire metropolises swept away not only by the force of the wave, but poisoned by the radioactive fallout it carries. Ports, naval bases, economic centers, all obliterated in one strike. This is not warfare aimed at defeating armies. This is annihilation aimed at making survival itself impossible. Why would Russia build such a weapon? The answer lies in the psychology of deterrence. For decades, the United States has developed advanced missile defenses, from interceptors in Alaska to radar networks spanning Europe. Moscow fears that in a future conflict, these defenses might neutralize its ability to retaliate against a first strike. Poseidon is Russia's answer, an unstoppable second strike weapon. No missile shield can stop a nuclear torpedo creeping along the ocean floor. No defense system can block a radioactive tsunami. Poseidon guarantees that if Russia is ever attacked, it can take its enemies down with it. The announcement of Poseidon in 2018 by Vladimir Putin was not subtle. Presented alongside animations of missiles striking Florida, it was framed as proof that Russia could not be contained. It was, in effect, a declaration that Moscow still possessed the power to terrify the world, just as it had during the Cold War. But unlike the ICBMs of old, Poseidon is not a weapon of parity. It is a weapon of terror. Its very existence sends a message: we are willing to end everything if pushed too far. Critics in the West debate whether Poseidon is practical, feasible, or even necessary. Some dismiss it as a propaganda tool, a psychological weapon meant more for headlines than for the battlefield. But even if it never leaves its submarine hangars, its symbolism is undeniable. Poseidon embodies the dark heart of nuclear deterrence, the idea that peace is preserved not through trust or cooperation, but through the threat of absolute destruction. As we begin to explore this story, remember, Poseidon is not just another weapon in Russia's arsenal. It is the manifestation of a terrifying logic, one that stretches back to the Cold War, but now resurfaces in a more dangerous world. A world where technology has caught up with imagination, and where the line between strategy and apocalypse grows thinner every day. Origins of Poseidon. The Poseidon did not emerge from nowhere. Its roots stretch back to the earliest days of the nuclear arms race, when the Soviet Union and the United States were locked in a struggle not just to outarm one another, but to outimagine each other's worst fears. Among the many bizarre and terrifying projects conceived in that era was the idea of a nuclear torpedo, a weapon that could bypass missile defenses and strike directly at the heart of enemy coastlines. In the early 1950s, Soviet engineers developed the T-15 torpedo, an enormous underwater weapon designed to carry a nuclear payload. The concept was simple, if horrifying. Soviet submarines would launch this weapon at U.S. coastal cities, where its detonation could devastate naval bases and harbors. The warhead envisioned for the T-15 was massive, among the most powerful ever conceived, rivaling even the Tsar Bomba. But the design was impractical. The torpedo was too large, too unwieldy, and too dangerous for real-world use. By the mid-1950s, the T-15 project was abandoned, a chilling relic of an arms race already brimming with apocalyptic ideas. Still, the dream of a superweapon never entirely disappeared. Soviet military thinkers remained fascinated by the idea of bypassing America's growing nuclear shield. While intercontinental ballistic missiles dominated strategic planning, the concept of a Doomsday torpedo lingered in classified documents and whispered conversations among defense officials. Fast forward to the post-Soviet era. The collapse of the USSR in 1991 left Russia weakened, its economy in ruins, its military struggling to maintain even basic capabilities. For years, Moscow lagged behind Washington in technological development, forced to watch as the United States expanded its missile defense systems in Europe and Asia. To Russian strategists, this imbalance was intolerable. They feared that a day might come when American defenses could neutralize Russia's ICBMs, robbing Moscow of its ability to deter a first strike. It was during this period of vulnerability that the seeds of Poseidon were planted. In the early 2000s, Russian defense planners revisited old ideas with new urgency. If missiles could be intercepted in the skies, perhaps the answer lay beneath the waves. The ocean, after all, is vast, silent, and nearly impossible to police. A nuclear-powered drone torpedo, capable of traveling thousands of miles undetected, could provide the ultimate guarantee of second strike capability. By 2015, whispers of such a weapon began to surface in Western intelligence reports. Codenamed Status 6, it was described as a massive autonomous underwater vehicle designed to carry a multi-megaton nuclear warhead. Details leaked in 2015, seemingly by accident, or perhaps deliberately, when Russian television broadcasted documents showing diagrams of the system. The world was stunned. Analysts debated whether it was real or mere psychological warfare. But in 2018, Vladimir Putin removed all doubt. In a dramatic speech, he unveiled Poseidon to the world, alongside a suite of other advanced weapons meant to restore Russia's status as a great power. Putin's presentation framed Poseidon as the ultimate response to Western pressure. As NATO expanded eastward and the United States deployed missile defense systems in Europe, Russia sought to prove it could still terrify its adversaries. The Poseidon, he declared, would have unlimited range, stealthy underwater movement, and a warhead powerful enough to devastate entire coastlines. Unlike missiles, it could not be intercepted. Unlike conventional nuclear weapons, it was designed to make vast areas uninhabitable for generations. Thus, the origins of Poseidon are not simply technical, they are psychological, political, and historical. It is the product of a nation that has always feared encirclement, a leadership determined to project strength despite economic weakness, and a military tradition that prizes asymmetric solutions. Where the United States spends billions on missile shields, Russia invests in a weapon that renders them irrelevant. Where conventional deterrence wavers, Poseidon promises certainty. Certainty of destruction. Certainty of fear. From the abandoned dreams of the T-15 to the grand spectacle of Putin's 2018 speech, Poseidon represents continuity across generations of Russian strategy. It is less an innovation than a resurrection, an old Soviet nightmare reborn in the 21st century. And like all such nightmares, its purpose is not to be used, but to haunt the minds of those who would dare to challenge Moscow. Anatomy of a superweapon. To understand why Poseidon has captured the world's imagination, one must look closely at its anatomy. It is not simply a torpedo, it is a fusion of nuclear propulsion, artificial intelligence, and apocalyptic payloads. The Poseidon is, quite literally, a weapon designed to embody the concept of unstoppable destruction. At its core, Poseidon is an autonomous underwater vehicle, AUV, a nuclear-powered drone the size of a small submarine. Estimates suggest it measures around 20 meters long and 2 meters in diameter, dwarfing conventional torpedoes. This sheer size allows it to carry not only a propulsion reactor, but also one of the largest nuclear warheads ever conceived for a deployable system. The propulsion is what sets Poseidon apart. Unlike conventional torpedoes that rely on batteries or chemical fuel, Poseidon is powered by a miniaturized nuclear reactor, giving it virtually unlimited range. In theory, it could travel thousands of miles beneath the ocean's surface, slowly weaving its way toward enemy shores without ever needing to refuel. This means Poseidon can be launched from Russian waters and still reach American coastlines, bypassing the need for vulnerable forward-deployed submarines. Its warhead is equally terrifying. Western intelligence estimates suggest yields anywhere between 2 to 100 megatons, depending on the configuration. To put that in perspective, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was about 15 kilotons. Poseidon could be thousands of times more powerful. Such a device could not only obliterate a city, but also trigger massive secondary effects. Analysts warn that a detonation near a coastline could create a radioactive tsunami, flooding ports and cities with irradiated seawater, rendering vast areas uninhabitable for decades. Even if the physics of such a tsunami are debated, the psychological impact of the threat is undeniable. Poseidon is also believed to incorporate stealth technologies. Traveling slowly along the ocean floor, it can blend into background noise, making it exceptionally difficult for sonar arrays or patrol submarines to detect. Its autonomous navigation systems are designed to allow it to avoid obstacles, adjust course, and reach targets without human input once launched. In essence, Poseidon is a doomsday drone, programmed to deliver destruction with minimal possibility of interception. Deployment is equally fascinating and alarming. Poseidon is expected to be carried by specially modified submarines such as the Belgorod and Khabarovsk. These motherships can transport multiple Poseidon drones, releasing them into the ocean like apocalyptic predators. Once unleashed, they would silently begin their long journey toward enemy coasts, lurking undetected until the moment of detonation. But Poseidon is not just about raw power, it is about strategic signaling. Unlike ballistic missiles, which can be tracked from launch to impact, Poseidon is designed to sow uncertainty. If deployed in a crisis, adversaries might never know how many Poseidons are in the water, where they are headed, or when they will strike. This uncertainty forces planners in Washington, London, and elsewhere to account for a catastrophic threat that may already be en route, invisible and unstoppable. Critics argue that some of these claims may be exaggerated. Could Poseidon truly deliver a 100-megaton payload without destroying itself in the process? Would a radioactive tsunami be as devastating as feared? These questions remain unanswered, but in many ways, the details do not matter. What matters is that Poseidon is believable enough to alter the calculus of deterrence. Its mere existence forces adversaries to imagine the unthinkable, and that is precisely its purpose. In the end, Poseidon's anatomy reveals a weapon less about practicality and more about psychology. It is designed to terrify, to guarantee that no matter how strong an adversary's defenses, Russia retains the power to devastate their most vital cities. It is, quite literally, the anatomy of fear given physical form. Strategy of terror. The Poseidon is not merely a weapon. It is a statement, a doctrine, a psychological tool forged in steel and uranium. Its very existence reshapes how nations think about nuclear war. Where traditional deterrence relies on the balance of intercontinental missiles, submarines, and bombers, Poseidon introduces a new dimension: the threat of annihilation through the oceans themselves. It is not a precision strike weapon, nor is it designed to win a war on the battlefield. Its mission is singular and absolute: to terrify. For decades, nuclear strategy revolved around the concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD. If one side launched a nuclear strike, the other would retaliate with equal or greater force, ensuring both were destroyed. This grim logic kept the Cold War cold, deterring direct conflict between the superpowers. But with the rise of advanced missile defenses in the United States, Russia feared that its second strike capability, the ability to respond after being attacked, was eroding. If U.S. defenses could intercept Russian missiles, Moscow's deterrence would collapse. Poseidon is designed to restore that balance through asymmetry. No missile shield can stop a nuclear torpedo creeping beneath the waves. No early warning radar can detect a drone moving silently along the seabed. Even if Russia's land-based missiles were neutralized, Poseidon ensures that entire coastlines could still be obliterated. It is the embodiment of the second strike, not just against military targets, but against the very foundations of civilization. The strategy is ruthless. By threatening coastal cities, economic hubs, and ports, Poseidon bypasses military defenses and strikes directly at the heart of civilian populations. It sends an unmistakable message: attack us, and your society will cease to exist. Unlike traditional nuclear weapons, which at least claim to target military infrastructure, Poseidon is designed for maximum terror. Its use would not just kill millions, it would poison seas, render land uninhabitable, and collapse economies dependent on coastal infrastructure. In this sense, Poseidon is less a military tool than a geopolitical lever. Its announcement by Vladimir Putin in 2018 was carefully staged. Not a quiet addition to Russia's arsenal, but a dramatic unveiling, complete with animations of waves swallowing enemy coastlines. The message was not subtle. Russia wanted the world to know that no matter how powerful the West became, it would always live under the shadow of Russian retaliation. This plays into a broader Russian strategy of psychological warfare, where the United States invests in high-tech precision weapons and global power projection. Russia often prefers to emphasize unpredictability and fear. The mere idea that Poseidon exists forces adversaries to consider nightmare scenarios in their planning. How do you defend against a weapon that could arrive undetected, years after being launched, carrying the power of 100 Hiroshimas? You cannot. That uncertainty is precisely the point. The strategy of terror is also deeply rooted in Russian military culture. Historically, Moscow has relied on intimidation to compensate for economic or technological disadvantages. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union built weapons of staggering size: the world's largest tank, the largest bomber, the most powerful bomb, not necessarily because they were practical, but because they projected strength. Poseidon follows this tradition. Whether or not it is ever fully deployed, it serves as a symbol of Russian resolve, a reminder that Moscow is willing to go further, risk more, and terrify more than its adversaries. For the West, the challenge is profound. To ignore Poseidon risks underestimating Russia's resolve. To overreact risks fueling an arms race in underwater doomsday weapons. Either way, the weapon achieves its purpose. It keeps Russia in the center of strategic calculations, ensuring that it cannot be sidelined or dismissed. Ultimately, Poseidon embodies a terrifying philosophy that the best way to guarantee survival is to make the cost of war unthinkable. It is not built to be used. It is built to haunt, to destabilize, to force every adversary to imagine the nightmare of a radioactive wave crashing against their shores. In the logic of deterrence, fear is as powerful as fire. Poseidon is both. The West responds. When Vladimir Putin unveiled Poseidon to the world in 2018, Western military analysts were stunned. Was this weapon real? Was it a bluff? A piece of psychological warfare dressed in animated graphics? Or was Russia truly on the cusp of fielding a weapon that could bypass every Western defense and annihilate entire coastlines? Whatever the truth, the West had no choice but to respond. The United States and NATO initially reacted with skepticism. Some dismissed Poseidon as propaganda, designed to capture headlines and frighten policymakers rather than provide a practical military advantage. After all, a 100-megaton underwater drone sounded more like the stuff of Cold War fever dreams than modern warfare. Yet intelligence reports soon confirmed that testing was underway. Satellite images revealed the construction of massive submarines, the Belgorod and Khabarovsk, designed specifically to carry Poseidon drones. What had once seemed implausible was now undeniable. Russia was building this weapon. The strategic implications were profound. For decades, U.S. nuclear strategy rested on the nuclear triad: land-based missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and strategic bombers. The triad guaranteed survivability and deterrence, with each leg covering the vulnerabilities of the others. Missile defense systems added a layer of protection, intercepting limited strikes and providing confidence against rogue actors. But Poseidon threatened to render parts of this strategy obsolete. No missile defense system could intercept a nuclear torpedo creeping beneath the ocean. No radar could provide early warning. The balance of deterrence had shifted. In response, Western planners began exploring new layers of defense. The U.S. Navy and NATO allies expanded investments in undersea surveillance systems, reviving concepts from the Cold War like SOSUS, Sound Surveillance System, and experimenting with modern equivalents. Networks of underwater sensors, patrol submarines, and unmanned underwater vehicles were proposed to detect Poseidon before it reached its target. The challenge, however, was immense. The ocean is vast, detection is difficult, and Poseidon is designed to move slowly and quietly, blending into background noise. Tracking it would be like finding a needle in a haystack the size of the Atlantic. At the same time, policymakers wrestled with how to interpret Poseidon strategically. Was it a serious addition to Russia's arsenal, or a symbolic weapon designed to terrify? Some argued that Poseidon was impractical, too costly, too unwieldy, and too apocalyptic to ever be used. Others countered that its very impracticality made it more dangerous. Because Poseidon bypasses traditional military targets and strikes directly at civilian population centers, its use would almost certainly trigger all-out nuclear war. By introducing such a weapon, Russia was signaling its willingness to escalate beyond traditional boundaries. Western media seized on the story, amplifying the fear. Headlines about radioactive tsunamis and doomsday torpedoes dominated coverage, spreading the psychological effect far beyond military circles. Whether or not Poseidon was ever deployed, it had already achieved part of its purpose. It had reinserted Russia into the center of global strategic conversation. The U.S. response was cautious but clear. Officials emphasized that America's nuclear deterrent remained intact, that Russia would still be destroyed in any nuclear exchange, Poseidon or not. Yet behind the reassurances, there was quiet recognition that a new chapter in the arms race had begun. Defense budgets began allocating funds to undersea warfare research. NATO navies intensified anti-submarine exercises. The race to counter Poseidon was underway. Perhaps the most striking Western response, however, was not military but psychological. By reviving the specter of a doomsday weapon, Russia had forced the West to think in apocalyptic terms again. During the Cold War, the world lived under constant fear of annihilation. In the decades since, that fear had faded, replaced by more limited concerns about rogue states and terrorism. Poseidon changed that. Suddenly, the idea of world-ending weapons was back in public discourse, back in the calculations of generals and presidents alike. In the end, the West's response to Poseidon revealed the weapon's true power. It did not need to be launched to succeed. It only needed to exist, to be tested, to be whispered about in war rooms and newsrooms alike. In that sense, Russia had already achieved a victory. Poseidon was shaping the strategic landscape not through detonation, but through dread. Risks and consequences. Every weapon carries risks, but Poseidon is in a category of its own. Unlike traditional nuclear arms, which are terrifying but at least governed by decades of doctrine and arms control treaties, Poseidon exists outside the established playbook. Its very design, autonomous, underwater, potentially carrying the largest nuclear warhead ever built, creates a host of dangers not just for adversaries, but for Russia itself. The first and most obvious risk is escalation. By threatening to annihilate entire coastlines with radioactive tsunamis, Poseidon crosses the line between military deterrence and mass terror. Its use would almost certainly guarantee all-out nuclear retaliation from the United States and NATO. No government could ignore an attack designed to kill millions of civilians and render vast swaths of territory uninhabitable. In this sense, Poseidon is less a weapon to be used than a weapon to be feared. But the very fact that it exists raises the chances of miscalculation. In a crisis, even rumors of Poseidon deployments could spark panic, push leaders toward rash decisions, and escalate tensions beyond control. The second risk is accident. Poseidon is powered by a miniature nuclear reactor, allowing it to travel virtually unlimited distances. But nuclear propulsion at such a scale is notoriously unstable. In 2019, a mysterious explosion during testing of a nuclear-powered missile, the Burevestnik, killed several Russian scientists and released radiation into the surrounding area. If Poseidon were to suffer a similar accident at sea, it could contaminate vast areas of the ocean, disrupt ecosystems, and provoke international outrage, even without being detonated. A lost Poseidon drone, lying silently on the seabed, would itself be an environmental and political disaster. There are also technical vulnerabilities. While the weapon is designed to be stealthy, it is not invulnerable. If detected by Western submarines or underwater sensor networks, it could be intercepted. But such an interception would raise its own risks. Would destroying a nuclear-powered torpedo in international waters release radiation? Would an attempted interception be seen as an act of war? The uncertainties surrounding Poseidon complicate every possible scenario. Beyond the military and technical risks lies the humanitarian and ecological nightmare of its potential use. A detonation near a coastline would not only kill millions instantly, it would poison the seas and land for generations. Ports would be rendered useless, fisheries destroyed, and major economic hubs permanently abandoned. The displacement of populations, the collapse of trade, and the cascading effects on global markets could spark a crisis extending far beyond the battlefield. In many ways, Poseidon is not just a weapon against nations, it is a weapon against the planet itself. Finally, there is the psychological consequence. By fielding Poseidon, Russia reinforces the idea that survival depends not on cooperation or diplomacy, but on the threat of apocalypse. It drags the world back into a mindset of fear reminiscent of the darkest days of the Cold War. Arms control agreements that once limited the spread of doomsday weapons are eroding. New technologies, autonomous systems, hypersonic missiles, cyber warfare, are reshaping how wars might be fought. In this volatile environment, Poseidon stands as a symbol of both technological ambition and strategic desperation. For Russia, Poseidon represents strength, a guarantee that it cannot be ignored or subdued. But it is also a gamble. Every test, every deployment risks escalation, and every mention of its existence deepens the global anxiety that the line of destruction is becoming thinner. In the end, the greatest risk of Poseidon may not be its detonation, but its shadow. Its presence on the global stage forces nations awareness that a single machine, lurking in waves, holds the power to end civilization as we know it. The shadow of Poseidon. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth becomes clear. Poseidon is more than a weapon. It is a symbol, a reminder that in the nuclear age, humanity continues to flirt with its own destruction. Born from the ashes of the Cold War and resurrected in the age of new rivalries, Poseidon embodies the darkest logic of deterrence, that peace is not guaranteed by trust, but by the ability to inflict unimaginable terror. Unlike conventional weapons, Poseidon exists in a realm of myth as much as reality. It has never been used in combat and may never be, but its power lies in the fact that it doesn't have to be. The mere knowledge that such a weapon exists, capable of traveling silently beneath the seas, delivering a warhead of apocalyptic proportions, and drowning entire coastlines in radioactive waves, is enough to alter the calculations of generals, presidents, and prime ministers. It reshapes the global chessboard not through action, but through fear. For Russia, Poseidon serves as both shield and message. It tells the world that no matter how strong NATO becomes, no matter how advanced US missile defenses grow, Moscow retains the ability to devastate its enemies. It is the ultimate insurance policy for a regime that sees itself surrounded, threatened, and besieged. But it is also a gamble. The risks of accident, escalation, and miscalculation are immense. In building Poseidon, Russia has not only created a doomsday weapon, it has tied part of its strategic credibility to a machine that terrifies even its own allies. For the West, Poseidon is a challenge without an easy answer. How do you counter a weapon that can slip beneath defenses, lurk undetected, and deliver destruction on a scale beyond imagination? How do you deter a deterrent built on terror itself? There are no simple solutions. Surveillance systems may improve, diplomacy may offer limits, but the shadow of Poseidon will remain. And for the world at large, Poseidon is a sobering reminder of the path we continue to walk. Decades after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, after treaties and promises to reduce nuclear stockpiles, humanity still clings to weapons capable of ending civilization. The dream of progress is still haunted by the specter of apocalypse. Poseidon stands as proof that the arms race never truly ended. It merely changed form. In the end, Poseidon is less about Russia or the West and more about us, the human tendency to build machines of destruction faster than systems of peace. It is a mirror held up to our fears, our ambitions, and our inability to let go of the logic of annihilation. So as we close this chapter, remember, the most dangerous thing about Poseidon may not be its warhead or its reactor or even its stealth. The most dangerous thing is what it represents, that even in the 21st century, with all our knowledge and technology, the shadow of doomsday still follows us, lurking silently beneath the waves.